In this video, I'm going to go through the process of putting a sky into this picture. It's a picture looking north from Yallingup up towards Sugarloaf Rock. So step one, the board's been covered in a burnt umber wash. So you've got access to a video of how to do that. Let's just have a quick look at the image itself. It's late afternoon on this coastline. You can see there's just some shadows here. The sun is slightly in the north, so casting those shadows on the south side of the rock. But generally the ridge is pretty much in full sunlight. And there's like a whitish, light blue impact of the sun on the left of the picture. And essentially the colour grades through up into this top corner and becomes a richer blue as we go through. So we're going to paint this in 3 or 4 zones. If it was more of a midday scene, the zones would be horizontal, and so we'd have very rich blues at the top coming down to lighter, greener blues at the bottom. But in this picture, because the light is coming from an afternoon sun and perhaps slightly to the north, it's creating brightness around here, and then the blues are getting richer as we move back. So that's our goal. I've got a bit of liquid in my pot. So generally what I do is I'll just, this is your first bit of painting, so I'll just say a few things about the techniques. I just start, this is my technique, just getting my brush a little bit free. I'm going to use quite a bit of cobalt blue. So let me just show you a little bit about taking paint out of the tube. So I squeeze a little bit of paint, probably easiest if I sort of do it so you can see it from the angle of the camera. I squeeze it and then make a comet tail. And what that does for me is that it allows me to access smaller amounts of paint if that's what I want to do at any stage. Excuse me. So that's my blue. I've got all my other colours set out as per the colour wheel. So red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, sort of the way it's set up. And these are my mixing colours. I've got titanium white and zinc white. I'll just be using titanium white today. I've got lamp black and burnt umber. So they're colours that really perform the function of reducing saturation in the primaries that we're dealing with. So let's get a bit of this blue. You see how I come in with my brush? I tend to come in low, and I call this a departure lounge. I know I've watched, when I was starting off, I watched other people paint, experienced people paint, and I sort of thought, what are they doing there? Why do they have this sort of departure lounge? But it's a way of just getting a little bit of paint to come out and then using that. I would never go in like that into the paint. You don't have much control over the amount of paint that you get. So a little bit of burnt umber. I don't want much of this because this is quite a rich blue in that top corner. And that's where I'm going to start. So I'm adding more blue. Let's see what we get. This is my first sort of run at it. I'm not terribly happy with that colour. But what is happening is on this very first layer, so don't be put off by it. In this very first layer, I've got a lot of burnt umber here which is coming through. So it's quite hard, unless I apply large amounts of paint, it's hard to sort of get the colour that I want. So I'm going to throw a little bit of titanium. Titanium white is a titanium dioxide, and it's super opaque. It reflects, obviously I looked this up, It reflects 97.5% of light that hits it. So only a very small amount of light gets through. So the way we experience is that it's quite a blue, it's quite a opaque sort of colour. So I've got my liquid there, and I'll just grab a little bit of that. I don't scoop it up. I just sort of dab in there and grab a bit. So this is getting a little bit better. But look, this is my first bit of sky. I'll show you another sky that I've done. Maybe I'll show you them in parts. This is one I did, and it's not particularly finished at this stage. It's sort of got quite a strong band. So that was when I was doing it in bands like that, but subsequently had a closer look at the picture and seen this progression from light up to a rich blue at the corner. So I'm going to redo that. That's not going to be hard to do, and I may demonstrate that. This is a more of a finished version, or more towards finished. It's not a finished painting, but you can see I've got some light here, and I've got very little of that burnt umber coming through. It is coming through, but in a subtle way, whereas here it's quite hard for me to get that coverage first up. So what I would suggest to you is don't be critical of yourself on this first pass. Look to just get some paint down, and the second, third, fourth times of putting down sky will be much more impactful in terms of getting a richer kind of colour. So I'll probably, once this, in my next part, I think I'll have this a little bit darker. So a little bit of burnt up, a bit of liquid, a bit of titanium, and I'll start grabbing a little bit of this blue, cadmium blue. And I have been putting some burnt umber in there, but I'm just going to slow down on that a little and see. Now, to my eye, this paint is a little bit thicker because I've got more titanium in it, and it's a little bit lighter. So I'll just drop it down like that. One thing I do really suggest is that you keep this line here, the line of the ridge that's been sketched out for you. So just don't kind of go down over that line. Try and maintain it. Okay, so here's the process that we're going to go through. I'm going to probably take this zone to about here. So I'm probably going to need to mix a little bit more paint. So I grab a little bit titanium white. See how I come in from the side? So I come in low and flat and just get a little bit on the tip of my brush so I can control it. I never go down and sort of lucky dip the colour, because I just don't have control over that. And with some colours like the phthalo blues and the blacks and the burnt umbers are just horrible when you put large amounts. So that's too light. So I'm going to, seeing I've mixed this, I'm going to put this into here. So you can see I'm painting in bands which reflect that movement from lower left to upper right. So again, I start to get a little bit careful when I'm near that ridge, and I get the brush flat, and you can see how the paint, like a sponge, gets pushed out from the pressure. So that's when I flip it over and access that paint. And at some point, there is no more paint to put there, so I need to load up again. So I'll keep mixing. You can just see the opacity of that titanium white. you know, just thinking about it, one of the reasons I probably don't need to put burnt umber in is because I've got that brown coming through already, so it's already having an impact. Now, I'm probably going to take this a little bit whiter just to get that progression. I may go out here a little, and then I'll just grab a little bit more titanium white than what I've had. And I'll just do this little bit in here. Again, I stop the flourishes when I'm close to things like horizons and ridges. So I'm flipping the brush over, just trying to get paint. Oh, there's always, you can always use paper towel. And look, it's not crucial, but just as, you know, I think as a beginner, probably, you're probably, from what I've seen, not going to be as, you're going to be a little bit more slapdash than super precise. So it's probably better just to make the point that lines like ridges and horizons you need to really take some care with. So I can sort of feel when the brush is not dropping any paint. It's almost like there's some friction there. Okay, so we've sort of got a bit of a band. You know, I could bang in a bit more white, but Ray, just leave it. You know, this is your first version. Don't worry about it too much. Okay, so I've got quite a white color on my brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look to maybe hatch this in. There's some bare spots, and so I don't know if you can hear those birds, the black cockatoos. And I want to hatch this bit together, but I've got quite a lot of light paint on my brush, so I don't like to waste my paint, so I'm going to maybe just clean it up a bit. And I'm going to just try and do some light brush strokes to draw that darker color in. And it's a sort of a hatching motion, or a stitching motion, a cross hatch, however you want to describe it. I'm trying to get rid of a lot of the lumps and bumps that are there, so you don't, you know, you really want this sky to look nice and flat. So I don't know if you can see, but there are some bumpy bits there and some bumpy bits there and there. So, you know, I'm pretty keen to get rid of them. I'm putting almost no pressure on the brush. I'm just holding it so that it goes across. So I'll put that down. And then I'll just put in some, just like I'm dragging the brush across. I've got almost no pressure. See how that dark blue came in, so I don't really want that. Okay, so, and I'll just give it a white. The main thing is to avoid any lumps. So this will do that. Just looking at that bit there, yeah, that looks all right. And I don't go in the middle, because if I go in the middle, it'll leave a mark like that. So generally I'll try and just start right at the outset. And you can see I'm leaving some darker blue because I'm picking that up over there. So I'll just give it a little bit of a wipe at the end of each. And I'm keeping these brush movements horizontal, because the sky is, you know, kind of a horizontal pattern. Okay, so that is where I'd leave it at this point. There's some marks there. It's not perfect, but the moral of this story is take a break. So I'll put that away. And I'll just show you the sort of things that can be done. So this is a bit impromptu, but I'm just going to show you. I want to reinforce some blueness up here. So this is the one I've been working on a bit, just ahead of the group, trying to make sure that I can action all the ideas I've got. So I'm going to go quite a rich blue on this. And so I'll put a little bit more liquid in so it's nice and sort of loose mix. And I'm going to do nothing more than come into this area. So that, you know, if you look at it, it is a bit richer. It is a bit bluer. So this is the sort of strategy that you can have with this. I'll bang this in. And honestly, I'm working on this sky a lot, so it's a work in progress. That's all it is. So now I want to try and splice it in. I'm doing this mainly as a demo. It's not really a, you know, it's not life and death that it all works out. So I'm going to cross hatch at the point where it joins. So just try and get some of that blue to spread out. I'm careful near my ridge because that ridge is really important as a part of the painting. So here we go. I'll just brush this off and it's pretty simple, just a single color like that. But you can see what I've done. I've got a few stripy bits there. So what I'm going to do, I can use my finger just to try and feather them out a bit, that edge a little bit. So just a very light finger, and then I've pretty well done it, but you can grab a paper towel as well to do that. So look, that's just a little simple example of what I've done of adding blue on. You saw how easy that was because I'd already done this coat. That was my first coat, so that's kind of rough as. And then I've probably done a second coat on top of that, a little bit better, but not that good. But then once you start adding more coats, it's really easy. So the next thing I might do is I might just lighten this up. And I won't demo that to you because you've got the principle. I'm sort of looking to show you principles so you can go off and work on these things independently and on other paintings as well. So there you go. That's it for this session. The main thing, there's no bumps in it, and then the next time we go, it'll all start to take shape and we'll have a lot more control over the colour.